Hey guys, Ben Crawshaw here. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar. Hey, I'm here a little bit early. You're here a little bit early. That's awesome. I just want to make sure you can see me, you can hear me, make sure the technical stuff is working, things are working fine. And also, I want to tell you that we have a chat stream. So we love for this to be a dialogue, not a monologue. We want this to be a conversation, not some type of lecture. So if you see the chat stream, I would love for you to just jump in there and type what's the best thing that's happened for you this week? What was the best part of this week for you? So jump in that chat stream and just let us know what's been the best part of this week for you so far. So want to make sure you can see me and hear me. Kelly Wallace is joining me on this webinar. So Kelly, can you see me? Can you hear me? Everything working fine technologically?
Hey, Ben. Yeah, everything's going great.
All right, great. So again, you guys jump in that chat stream, say, hey, what is the best part of this week for you? What's the best thing that's happened to you this week? Jump in our chat stream and let us know. And then also, as this webinar goes along, if you have any questions, type them in there, because here's the great thing about it is, sometimes, we'll be able to read a question and we can talk about it live. And sometimes there's other church leaders who are in the chat stream that have great answers to your questions. And that's what I love about this. I love the opportunity for all of us to learn together. So this is not, the Rocket Company knows everything about this situation, and so we're sharing it with you. The Rocket Company is based on learning from church leaders and just gathering from churches that are doing things well and putting those pieces together for churches out there everywhere. So I love you guys interacting with each other, helping each other out. So Kelly, has anyone jumped in that chat stream and said the best part about this week for them so far?
Hey, Ben. Yeah, we're seeing some fans from cupcakes and also some people who are really excited about coffee.
Really excited about what?
Coffee.
Oh, coffee. Yes. Yes. Coffee is the best part of every week. So that's awesome. Okay. So again, if you're just jumping in, get in that chat stream. Tell us what's the best thing that's happened to you or for you this week. And we're going to go live in about 2 minutes. But I appreciate you guys being here, taking time out of your busy schedules and joining us for this webinar. So we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, it's Ben Crawshaw here. Thank you guys again for carving out time. You have a lot going on. I understand that, and joining us for this webinar. I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about today, and just really excited to have you guys on board with this time together. So we have a chat stream, and I hope you can see it in front of you. And that chat stream, the purpose for that is for us to interact and for us to have conversations and you to ask questions that we can talk about, or maybe other church leaders can get in the chat stream and answer. But we love this to be a conversation. So one of the things I asked people to do before the show was to type in the best part about this week. So I would love for you, if you're just jumping in, to get in that chat stream and tell us the best part, the best thing that's happened for you this week. So Kelly Wallace is going to be joining me. She's going to be the moderator, reading and answering some questions. So Kelly, are there any more people have answered what's the best part of their week so far?
Hey, Ben. Yeah, we have, let's see, Pastor Jack. He gets to see glimpses of the sunset recently, so that's nice. Tom is super excited about the Cubs. Which I think all of us are. And then Betty is, she's just been loving having family to celebrate her husband's birthday.
That's awesome. Yes, we are all excited about the Cubs. Everyone in the country is excited about the Cubs, except for people from Ohio. Outside of that, everyone else is excited. It's awesome. I love this time of year. I love the World Series. I just love it. And, of course, football, we're about halfway through the season. So a lot of good stuff happening, especially if you're a sports fan. Okay. So what I'm about to do is I'm going to take myself off the screen, and then I'm going to go so you can see the slides for today's training. And we're going to try to figure out a way to email you those potentially as a PDF, or get those slides to you. Just a warning, if you haven't been to a webinar training with me before, I tend to get excited and talk really fast. And so sometimes it's like, whoa, what'd you say? Slow down. But I can't, okay? I've tried. I'm not very good at slowing down. But we'll try to send you those in case you miss anything. But again, I'll ask you, Kelly, one more time. Everything good? You can hear everything, see everything?
Yep, things are going great. Thanks, Ben.
All right, great. So, guys, that's awesome. I'm going to go off screen here and move to my slides so that, let's see here, entire screen, share. So I'm going to share my screen here and do that. Kelly, you guys can see that?
Yep, we see your screen perfectly.
Okay, great. All right, guys, so let's jump in today. We're going to be here under an hour, and we're going to move quickly. And I just want this to be helpful for you because I know attendance, man, what a tough topic sometimes. And there's so many theories, so many opinions out there. Like, what do we do when it comes to declining attendance, struggling attendance, or wanting to grow attendance? So we're going to talk about solving the church attendance puzzle. And we're not going to solve it completely because there's really is no way to do that. Sometimes churches are growing and it really is a mystery. Sometimes two churches are doing the same thing. One is growing, one isn't. There are so many factors at play that it's hard to just say, okay, this is the answer for attendance, but we're certainly going to have a conversation about it today. And again, we have that chat stream. Man, feel free to jump in there, ask any questions, share any comments that you want to. My name is Ben Crawshaw. I'm Director of Content at the Rocket Company. Been in ministry since 1998, and I love small churches. I grew up in a small church. My dad is the pastor of a small church, about 125 people. Now, that may be a big church to you, but 125 people compared to some of the churches, other churches in my town, some of the other churches that were around us, it was a pretty small church. And my first job was at a small church. And so I just love them. I love big churches too. I worked at North Point Community Church, a staff of over 350 people, somewhere they passed the 40,000 person mark in attendance. And I loved working there, but I just love small churches and church leaders at small churches. And I'm passionate about helping churches and making a difference. And really what I try to do is just learn from as many churches as possible, and have been able to network with a lot of churches through my time at North Point, my time working at Orange for Reggie Joyner, my time at the Rocket Company, just being exposed to a lot of churches and just collecting what people are learning and doing well. and what people want to learn about, and then trying to export that to you guys. That's the goal of content for the Rocket Company, is just to be helpful for you, especially if you're in a small church. And so my goal today is for you to feel hope about the future of your church body, for you to feel hope about the future of impacting your community, of increasing your attendance, of confirming and appreciating people who already attend. And if you stay till the very end, again, we'll be here under an hour, but if you stay till the end, I'm going to share a very practical tip for leading people who infrequently attend. And it's very, very practical. I always fall on the practical application side, not the theoretical, side or philosophical side, because I just want to provide stuff that is helpful for you guys right now. I'm also going to share a few other tips about some of the stuff that we talk about today. Now, a lot of church attendance trainings or talks or sermons or messages about that to church leaders leave you feeling hopeless and discouraged, don't they? At least they do me. Maybe that's just me, because they tell you about a problem you're already aware of. And so they talk about how, things that people are no longer coming to your church, and you're like, I know, I get that. I'm there and I care about it every week. And they leave you feeling guilty, or sometimes they leave you feeling like your church isn't cool enough to get more people to show up, that it's just not cool. You don't have enough cool stuff. You don't have enough cool people. You don't have enough, lights, and you don't have enough, all of this stuff to get people to show up. And the truth is, there are cool churches out there that are growing, and there are cool churches out there that are declining, and there are uncool churches out there that are growing, and uncool churches out there, that are declining in attendance. And what I'm talking about today is not a knock on any style of church. It's not a promotion of any style of church. So I don't want that to be the conversation at all. I have just, in my experience, attended some trainings about church attendance that made me feel like, man, we're just not cool enough to get people in these doors, and being cool enough is not the answer. Okay. The truth is this: you work hard to get people to show up, and you prepare as well as you can to engage them. And I know some weeks you prepare better than others. Some weeks you have more distractions than others. But it's something that all church leaders care about and try to figure out ways, to fix. And you pray. If you don't pray, for God to bring people into the doors of your church from your community, then that should be something that you pray about, I believe, because I think God in his heart loves and cares about people who are in the doors of a church and who aren't. But also we know, man, the hope and the truth and the encouragement and the community and, the investment in the next generation that a church provides is essential for people who don't have that hope, who aren't teaching and planning faith into their kids, who don't get encouragement. I mean, they just get discouraged all the time. There's no place for them to get encouragement, and have all these messages that are being sent to them, and don't have a place to counter those messages with truth from God's word. And so, man, I would love for our churches to reach more of those people who desperately need what church offers. The main focus of today's training isn't about guilt and all the things you're doing wrong. It's about application, simple things you can do or think about moving forward. And the way I used to handle low, declining, or infrequent attendance, I remember my first job, I was a student pastor, and there was a time where we were just thriving. I mean, it was a small church, and we had like 90 students there. And I remember it was like about a year later, we're trying to, we're right around the 30, 35 mark. And I was just so discouraged, and I would blame people like it's their fault. It's, blame it on some of the key people there, compare my church or my student ministry with bigger churches. And I would make excuses for things the way that they were. But overall, I just felt discouraged. And I felt like high attendance equaled a high sense of worth for me. And a low attendance meant low worth. So my mood, in a lot of ways as a church leader, was dictated by how many people were in attendance. And over time, I learned that when attendance was down, my cynicism didn't increase it. If low attendance was the problem in my mind, Cynicism did nothing to make that problem better. Cynicism didn't encourage more people to show up. It didn't make the people who were already there feel like, wow, this is great. I should invite more people to this cynicism. My cynicism wasn't helping at all, and my value didn't come from attendance. And so this discouragement or burnout or just frustration I felt because there weren't as many people there, that meant I was placing some of my value in how many people were there. Now, there's a sense of disappointment, sure. There's a sense of, man, I would love for more people to be here. I hope that we could reach more people in our community, but certainly not to hang any of my self-worth or my value on the number of people who were there. And so I've learned, hey, focus on God with hope instead of attendance with cynicism. Instead of focusing on the numbers and feeling cynical, why don't I focus on God and have a hopeful, let the God of all hope fill me with all joy and peace as I trust in him so that I may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. Man, what a better way for me to anchor myself when it comes to approaching attendance. Learning to focus on people with love instead of attendance with insecurity. So focusing on God with hope. So God, I put my hope in you. Help me to love the people who are here and the people who aren't here. It's a much better approach to attendance. And if that's all you get out of this training, I hope for some of you that may be just a game changer today, because you've been focusing on the lower parts of these sentences. You've been looking at your attendance and you feel very cynical, and you've been looking at your attendance and you feel very insecure. And I say, hey, put your hope in God and love people. Put your hope in God and love people. So today we're going to talk about 5 keys to solving the attendance puzzle. Okay. And these aren't the only keys. By no means am I saying, hey, these are the things, the only things. It's just 5 pieces that we're going to talk about. And before we get there, let's just talk about some of the reasons why attendance is declining. There's many reasons, but here's why. People don't feel as guilty for not going to church. Have you ever thought about that? That, man, that used to be in a lot of cultures, or maybe in the South, or maybe depending on, if you grew up in a church family, wow, you felt guilty if you didn't go to church. That's just what you're supposed to do. You get up on Sundays and go to church. I know some people that, man, they made some terrible decisions on the weekends, but there was never any question on Sunday morning, you get up and you go to church. People don't feel that guilt like they used to. People are busier than ever. There's more games, practices, people travel more. There's a lot more going on Sundays than there was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And people don't see the value of community. There's a lot more people kind of have this, private God and I spirituality, kind of this, I relate to God on an island, and it's kind of not really anybody else's business, and I don't really want to talk about it. And so, they don't see, well, what I read my Bible and I listen to sermons, I listen to podcasts, I listen to worship music. I don't understand why I need to go sit on a row with some other people, especially if I don't have kids. Like, what is the value in all of that? These are some of the many reasons why attendance is going down in some places. Here's the cold hard truth for us as church leaders. Our expectations don't match our congregation's priorities. For us, being at church on Sunday, it's a huge priority. A lot of us get paid to do that, so it certainly is an expectation. But we expect ourselves to be at church on Sundays, and not everybody in your congregation prioritizes that, and not as many as would have 20 years ago, and probably not as many as would have 2 years ago. The truth is, it's just not as big of a priority for some people as we expect it to be, and we have to understand that, and that our priorities don't match our community's convictions. So the people that you want to reach, they don't feel this sense of, oh man, I should go to church. But you prioritize it, but they don't feel convicted about it. And so that's just some truth that we have to accept. And so our options are to give up, get cynical, guilt people, become depressed, or think, pray, love, hope, plan, and fight. Again, love people, put your hope in God. Love people, put your hope in God, and just keep fighting to reach people in your community and keeping your congregation engaged. Okay. Last reminder, the church is not an institution. Okay. It's a vehicle for God's movement, and the work of the Holy Spirit is greater than the number of bodies and seats. So it's not an institution measured by attendance, although we all measure attendance. Church, it is a vehicle for the movement of God. So thinking in terms of God's movement, and what God is doing here today isn't always, doesn't always match the number of bodies and seats, because you could have a ton of people sitting there and it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, God is moving in this place. God is using us to impact lives. So number one, we're going to talk about love. Okay, we've already talked about it. We're going to talk about love. This is the number one place you can get your perspective. The number one thing you can think about when it comes to attendance of your church. This is the great commandment. Literally, Jesus, what is the most important thing? Love God, love others. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's cliche to us in the church world, but we have to remember it is the greatest. That's the adjective for it, the greatest commandment. So focus on people and their hearts instead of numbers and your dreams. We have dreams as church leaders, but we got to continue to keep ourselves focused on people and their hearts, their walks with God, their pain, their struggle. Remain with a posture of compassion towards people, not a posture of frustration because people aren't filling up our seats the way we wanted them to. And what if you could measure movement that reflected the great commandment? We're all going to measure attendance, but what if you could also measure, hey, how well is our church loving each other and loving God? How is our church doing when it comes to demonstrating God's love to this community? That to you got you as fired up as a packed house on Easter. That, man, our numbers aren't what I hope they had been, but there's movement. The older generation is investing in the younger generation. The younger generation is investing in the community, and our kids are being invested in and trained well, and we're loving each other. There's unity in this church building. Man, that should get you as fired up as, man, there's a lot of new faces that are here. And what we should sometimes just measure our most effective metric in the church, as church leaders, should be love. How well are we loving in this church building? So here's a practical application. The percentage of regular attenders who serve may be just as important as the percentage of members who regularly attend, okay? So let's say that you have 300 members of your church, but only about 150 show up on a weekly basis. So about 50% of your members actually attend consistently, or even every other week. Well, okay, so that's 50%. That's a measurement. But what if you said, okay, out of the 150 that show up, 80 of them serve, regularly or, semi-regularly. So that was a bigger win than the number of members who regularly attend. Yeah, if we have 300 members, we would love for there to be 260 people there on a Sunday. The truth is, it doesn't always happen. But if on consistent average, we're right around 100 people, then I would love keep upping the percentage of people who serve. Again, the older generation, they've learned so much. I'm talking about people who are empty nesters, people who are grandparents, and they need to be investing in people who are in their 20s and 30s. And it's not like, oh, I've served my time. Now I'm just going to sit back and play golf and just, I don't know how to connect with people in their 20s and 30s anyway. No, hey, you need to get off the bench. And people who are in their 20s and 30s, they need your wisdom. Whether you did it right or you made some mistakes, they need your wisdom. People who are involved, but people who serve. It could be a different metric for you than just the number of members who regularly attend. All right, I'm going to go to point number 2, and then we're going to take some questions, okay? Think about the people who don't show up. All right, think about the people who don't show up. I'm not talking about think about them with frustration. Yeah, of course I think about them. I'm mad at them. But think about how to impact them. You work hard on your sermons. Why not find a way for people who miss your service to be exposed to truth? And, that's really thinking from a technological standpoint. Could your sermons be, could you have a podcast that plays your sermons? Or could you post your sermons online? And I know for some of you that technology seems a little intimidating, but it may not be as difficult as you think. Even just in audio recording, people may or may not listen to it, but I tell you what, people are driving around in their cars, and a lot of them listen to talk radio. A lot of them listen to podcasts, and a lot of them they just travel, or they're busy, or it's not like they're mad at the church. They just don't show up all the time, but they would listen to your sermons throughout the week. which would help you allow them to stay connected to the community and to be exposed to truth even during the week. And, that's a way to think about church attendance with people who aren't there, who aren't physically there on a Sunday. Provide easy to use online tithing with the option for automated recurring giving. And we offer that at the Rocket Company through Rocket Donations. And the reason why I say this is because of the verse, where your treasure is, there is your heart. And if people, even though they travel, they move around, but they can continue to support the mission and vision of your church, their heart's going to stay more vested. My family travels a lot, but I set up online recurring tithing at my church, and it just keeps my heart invested in what's happening in the church. And it's just another way to keep people engaged who don't show up consistently. And here's a practical application, okay? You ready? This may sound intimidating, but I want you to stay with me. Have a technology meeting with key leaders, elders, and volunteers. And you can handpick the people for this meeting. It could be 3, 4 people, maybe 5, and brainstorm more ways to reach and engage people who can't make it to church every Sunday. And the reason why I call that a technology meeting is it's most likely going to entail utilizing some technology. And it can be, hey, we're just going to put our video, our sermons on YouTube, or we're going to do a podcast. We're going to set up online recurring giving, which again is an incredible thing to utilize if you're not utilizing it. There may be some non-technological solutions that come out of your meeting, some things that involve you mailing things to them throughout the week, but there's going to be some ways to stay connected through technology. Maybe there's a weekly email that's sent out, recapping what's happening. I know for me, I get an email from my child's preschool every Sunday afternoon telling me what they talked about that morning. And that allows me to have a conversation with my 3-year-old and say, hey, what'd you talk about today? Oh, did you talk about how, God makes good things? And it's just a conversation starter. Technology, them having my email address and my current email address enables them to send me that email. It's a technology thing. So Kelly, we're going to jump in with some Q&A, and I'd love to know, I went one slide there too far. I'd love to know what people out there are asking.
Hey, Ben. Yeah, we've had some great questions come in. David is asking, when you have guests coming, but attendance numbers don't change, how can you know who has stopped coming? Kind of the backdoor question.
Yeah, as far as specific people, that's just going to take a lot of work from a standpoint of, walking around in the room before the service starts or afterwards. And again, I don't know the size of your church, but the truth is for most of us is we're not going to know who's there and who's not there. But we need to have people out there who do. Church leaders, we need to have enough people in and around our main sanctuary as church is getting ready to start, so that people can be aware of, I haven't seen that family in about 3 weeks, and I'm going to shoot them a text and see what's going on. And we're going to talk at the end about a guest services team. That's a huge piece of this. Ushers, greeters, your church staff, whatever it is. In my first job, that's part of what my pastor asked me to do. He said, you just walk around the sanctuary, starting 30 minutes before church starts, and you just have conversations with people, especially people who are there for the first time. But as I did that, I started realizing where people typically sat. And if they weren't there for a while, I knew something was up, and we had a conversation about that. So that's great that you have new guests showing up. And the truth is, your current members, there's going to be a lot of fluctuation. But if somebody's been gone for a little bit and you can reach out to them, that's huge. What's next, Kelly?
Hey, we have Brother Malzone, who is asking, do you count online viewing of the sermon and church service as an attendance?
I count it, but I count it as a separate attendance. So I basically, it's a separate service in my head. Not everybody has to do it this way, but this is how many people attended on Sunday. This is how many people attended online. So it's a separate category, but I certainly count it, and it's just a separate metric.
Great. David asks, if we give attendees more ways to stay engaged via technology, do we risk them showing up even less?
Yep, certainly. I think there is a way, there's some downfall to, okay, all of the, the service is going to be live online. And so now people are going to be watching it in their pajamas instead of getting up and coming to church. And we're actually going to talk about that in just a minute. That's a great question. That certainly is a risk. Now, one of the ways you can kind of offset that risk a little bit is by the podcast of your service, because that's going to be accessed by people who want it, and by people who are going to be driving around in their cars by themselves, most likely. That's different than it's Sunday morning. I'm not getting up and going to church because I can sit here and watch online. I don't have a perfect answer for that yet, but I'm still willing to engage more people at the risk of a few people not showing up live if I have the opportunity for online recurring giving. So I'm not losing the ability to inspire people to make donations to the church and support the mission and vision of it. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but that is a great, great question and a great conversation. Let's go one more, Kelly, if you have it.
Yeah. What would you say is a healthy percentage of members for them to attend?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't know that there is a perfect answer to that, because sometimes people are, they still consider themselves members of your church, and they don't even live in the same state anymore. And I know in my church experience, people go into the military, or again, people are relocated for their job, and they say, we still consider this our home church. To which I want to say, well, that's actually problematic, because you live in a new town and you need to become a part of a church community in that town. But again, online, as far as your services, and online as far as recurring tithing, allows people to stay engaged if they want to stay engaged with your church. But you certainly want to encourage them, if they're somewhere else, to get planted, involved in a church somewhere else. All of that being said, the answer to your question would be, I would see how many of those people still live around, and how many of them are you aware have already started going to other churches. Once you can eliminate those two groups of people, then I would just push for it to be over 50% on a given Sunday. And the more you can push up from there, but if over 50% of the people who call themselves members are showing up, then you're off to a good start with all of this. Okay, those are great questions. We're going to keep moving. We'll get back to some more questions. Thank you guys for being engaged in the chat stream. Number 3, focus on kids. Okay, focus on kids. If there's one thing that you can do as a church to stabilize your attendance, it is focus on preschoolers and early elementary age students. You show me a church that makes children's ministry a huge priority, and I'll show you a church with stabilized attendance. Now, let me pause there, because I know what some of you may be thinking. Every church leader out there says, yes, our children's ministry is a huge priority. Everybody says that. But in reality, what a lot of us do, and I've done this as a church leader, is we put more of our heart, more of our budget, more of our care, more of our concern into what happens on the main stage on Sunday mornings. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But parents will go places that their kids want to go, even if they don't want to go. And if my kids want to eat at places that I don't want to eat at, and there are a lot of times where I eat there are a lot of things I show up at, a lot of things that I do that I don't want to do. That's called, the sacrifice of being a parent. But if you can get kids excited about being at your church and excited about showing up, you're going to have some parents that they're going to drag along with them. And there are a lot of parents that come back to church when they have their first child. Maybe they grew up in church. They're gone, late high school, all through college, their single years. They get married. They're still not coming to church. Then they have their first kid, and they're like, we want our kid to grow up in church like we did. And so they're going to go to a place where people take really, really good care of their kid. And man, the more you can just engage kids and love kids and make it a fun, attractive, engaging place for kids, the more your attendance is going to stabilize. And that's not always a promise and always a guarantee. But man, if I became a pastor of a church right now, I would put a lot of my emphasis into children's ministry and preschool ministry, because I know if I can get those kids excited, their parents are going to be right behind them. And what a huge way to engage the hearts of, some kind of jaded, uninterested, I don't know what I think about this parents, is by getting their kids just all excited about what's happening at your church. People make very few excuses on behalf of their kids. And what I mean by that is, we may make excuses to our kids' teachers if our kids misbehave. Oh, she's tired. We always say she's tired. We'll say, oh, she's just had a lot going on. But I mean, when our kids want to do things and our kids are really passionate and excited about something, over time, it's like they kind of wear us out and we'll do it. My 7-year-old daughter just loves gymnastics and, is slowly wearing me down towards, she wanted me to get a gymnastics mat in our house. And I'm like, I don't want a gymnastics mat in our house. Well, guess what? Now we have a gymnastics mat in our house, because eventually I ran out of excuses and I really just gave up, actually. And man, hey, that's a great story in your church for a dad to get kind of worn down, and eventually he shows up and, man, God gets a hold of him. The Holy Spirit moves in him, and and that's a person who's now walking in a vibrant relationship with Jesus Christ. Kids can do that. After you work on that, then focus on teenagers, college-age students, young singles, and just keeping your perspective on the next generation is great. Practical application is do a self-assessment. How much does your church truly do to engage the next generation? And just ask a couple of people. Have a conversation about it and try to be as honest with yourself as possible. What are we doing? How much are we doing? How much do we think about this? And focus on this. And it's a great way to solve the church attendance puzzle, okay? Number 4 is express gratitude. You want to express gratitude to people who are attending, okay? Instead of guilting or, being frustrated or pouting about the people who aren't there, you want to love on and focus on and thank the people who are there. The best way to motivate is to appreciate. The best way to motivate them is to appreciate them. Thank them. Thank people who invite people. I ask people to invite people. Invite people. Hey, if your son is playing Little League Baseball and you've gotten to know some parents, their son also plays on that team, have the boldness to invite them to church. Here's what I know is that, for every 10 times I say that, there's going to be 2% of people who actually do it. But I want to appreciate them when they do. And I want to make a big deal out of that, because what's rewarded is repeated, and it's casting vision. Gratitude equals vision. I thank my kids for doing things that I want them to continue doing. And because I'm casting vision. Hey, you looked that man in the eye and you said, yes, sir. And I really, really appreciate that. I'm casting vision for them. The best way to cast vision is to celebrate wins and to let people know that you're grateful. And here's why you're grateful, that they're showing up. And so the truth is, for you guys, you have people who they've planted their flag at your church, and they've made a very, very, diligent effort to show up at least 3 out of 4 Sundays. Even 2 out of 4 Sundays, that's a big deal these days, guys. I'm telling you, with all the busyness and everything else that people have going on. So people have said, your church is my church, and I'm going to work hard to show up. Well, that needs to be appreciated. And practical application is a brand new product. Literally no other human beings know about it except for those of you who are on this webinar, is what happens when you attend. And what happens when you attend is a book. It's a short book. It's an easy read. But really, you know what it is? It's a way of appreciating and casting vision for people who attend your church. And you reinforce to them the reasons why attendance is such a big deal. And it talks about community. It talks about truth, encouragement, developing faith in your kids, the next generation, and being a part of the mission and vision, God's movement through the local church. That's what happens when you attend. And it's just a little booklet and has a thank you note attached, a card attached with it, and it's just your way of rewarding, which equals repeating. It's your way of appreciating, which casts vision. hey, this is why you showing up is such a big deal. And that's what that phrase happens, throughout this little book. And we have cases of this ready so that you can be giving these to people in your church who regularly attend, or even who attend for the first time. Say, this is a big deal. This is why attending church is a big deal. Because a lot of people, even Christians, have never thought about why do I need to be here? Why? My relationship with God is between God and I. And this absolutely answers that. And I think it's a great practical application to the appreciation piece. Kelly, let's jump in with some more questions.
Great. Dave is asking, what should we do to help people see the value of community?
You should celebrate it, and you should interview people who have benefited from community within the local church. So let your people be spokespeople for community. And the truth is, hey, even if you don't have Sunday school, you don't have small groups, if you don't have any of that, that's okay. Community is still happening in your church. And there are people who have gotten engaged. They've developed friendships. They're doing work together, babysitting. They refer to each other, people that are hanging out. You got singles that are now bridesmaids and groomsmen in each other's lives because of the church. Those stories need to be celebrated and highlighted to your congregation. And it needs to say, hey, relationships within the context of the local church, which is God's movement to this world, our relationships that we've developed in those processes have changed us, have benefited us. And, my dad's church, he was interviewing these two guys who were seniors in high school and about to graduate. And they were both talking about how there were some other people in the church who had been like second parents to them, which means they had helped raise them. And I'm like, that's community. Community is not just small groups and Sunday school. It is just the organic relationships that happen. And I would highlight those, celebrate those, appreciate those, interviews, videos, however you want to do it, sermons where you highlight these different stories, making a big deal out of that because it just shows people, oh, this thing is valuable to me.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Curtis is asking if you have any insight on how to successfully build a children's ministry with space and curriculum restraints.
Here's what I know about space constraints is that kids can pile on top of each other. And, I say that jokingly, but I would be willing to, let it get pretty crowded and let some piece of the adult side of church be invaded a little bit on behalf of the next generation. And, if enough kids are showing up, depending on the type of community and the way in which those kids are showing up, typically it's going to, increase the budget because you have parents who are showing up. Although young kids, that's a time when a lot of parents don't have a lot of money. But you cast vision as to, hey, when you tithe here, you're tithing on behalf of your kids because we're investing in the next generation. It may, warrant a little budget for you to get some space. As far as the curriculum issue goes, I don't know what your denomination or whatever, what those restraints are. There's a lot of great resources online that you can probably find for free if you just work hard enough to kind of find the people out there that you can trust and the people out there who, are delivering some ideas that you can kind of take and run with from there. So guys, again, these are great questions. We're going to jump in with some other questions in just a second. So stay on board with us. I'm going to talk about some very practical tips at the end, but I love these questions and I love what you guys are talking about. So we're going to jump into point number 5 first, which is developing people who do attend. Develop people who do attend. And hey, as church leaders, isn't it so true, especially for those of you who are senior pastors, that often on a Sunday morning when you're looking around or when you stand up to speak and deliver your sermon, you immediately become aware of who's not there. And I'm not talking like specific names and people and individuals. I mean, you look out into the congregation and you see how empty it feels sometimes, or how many more people you wish were there. And sometimes we get discouraged about low attendance instead of, man, every time I get discouraged about low attendance, I'm going to allow that to fuel me to focus in and love the people who do attend. And what if you focus more on small group participation and active Bible reading than attendance. And again, it could be Sunday school participation. It could be community, like we talked about before, serving. It could be serving, going on mission trips. The things that really impact people within the context of a church: serving, connecting, stretching their faith a little bit, developing spiritual habits and disciplines. And for the people who are there, if you said, you know what, my attendance this year is down 5% from last year, but 10% more of the men in this church, the dads in this church, are reading their Bibles at least 3 times a week. That is a win. That's a win. As dads go, families go. And if you can impact dads' relationships with God and their spiritual disciplines, you can do a lot for a family, which does a lot for a community, which does a lot for a church body. It's just a way of, kind of training yourself to focus on the people who do attend. Think like a missionary to your community, not like a modern American pastor. That's not a knock on being a modern American pastor, by the way. I'm just saying, sometimes when attendance is down, you have to think like a missionary. You have to think about how we can connect to this local tribe in their native language. What is it that what is it about this community that would allow us to connect with more people and have more conversations with more people about what's happening at our church? And the truth is, you have to really think about casting vision to the people who do attend about the reason why and what changes in it, and how our heart stretches when we simply invite people to church, when we bring people to the well and let them drink. And you don't want to, guilt people or berate them about that. You don't want to over talk about it, but you certainly have some times where you cast clear vision as a church leader, as a pastor, to the importance of people in your church, being bold enough to invite other people to church. Use the next generation. You could say, hey, there are kids out there. They are the future. And right now they are being exposed to all kinds of messages all day, every day. And they have no counter truth to that. And that's what we have. That's what we have the opportunity for once a week, for an hour and a half a week. We have an opportunity to counter the messages that the next generation is hearing. Thousands and thousands of messages a week. We get to counter it with the truth of Jesus Christ, with the hope of the gospel. And for them to be exposed to that, it may require you to invite their parents to church. Think like a missionary. The practical application is make sure everyone in your church has access to a Bible or a Bible app. And it's just a practical way to think about it. Some of your church budget may be spent on finding, what translation do you preach out of, and getting copies of that translation, not because people are going to bring their Bibles to church, because they're probably not in a lot of churches, but simply so that people are going to have a Bible. And so that if they get so desperate as to read their Bible for the first time, they have one. And maybe you even bookmark for them where you think they should start if they've never read the Bible before. So, Kelly, we're going to get to some questions in just a minute. But first, let's do one question, Kelly, and then we'll come back to some more Q&A. Let's get one real fast.
Great. What would you say to a church that's in the middle of some renovations that may be losing attendance because of that?
Well, I would be casting vision as to why you're renovating, and be working as hard as possible, which I'm sure you are, to get things as comfortable as possible for them on a Sunday or whenever you meet. And then let the chaos ensue of a renovation. I get that. It may require there to be some volunteer teams that do some mobilization, some cleanup, and some moving stuff around on Fridays or Saturdays to get it ready for church each week while you're doing this renovation. But the truth is, just cast vision out loud. Keep saying it. This is why. Connect it to heart, to life change. You may have to put posters up around your church so that people see that. Casting vision to the promised land, so to speak, of what this renovation is going to hopefully do for your church. So that's a great question. You guys have asked a lot of great questions. I'm going to ask you a question now. Would you like to motivate attendance by appreciating attendance? What's rewarded is repeated. And so would you like to reward people and cast vision into their heart, and to get them to repeat the spiritual act of attending church? The past hour, we've talked about a lot in the past hour. There's so much more to talk about. We could talk about this for 3-4 days in a row, for 5 or 6 hours a day, because there's so much to talk about. Even if we had all day, we couldn't cover it. We need 3 or 4 days, like I just said. And you need more than just a training. You need some resources. You need resources. Your team needs resources. Your congregation needs resources. And the reason why they need resources is because church attendance is not a priority for them like it is for us. And they don't think about it the way we think about it. Some of them do, but most of them don't. And there needs to be more in front of them. And it's not going to be us as talking heads. There's got to be a different way to cast vision and reinforce attendance. And that's why what happens when you attend, again, first time ever. This is the first time we've ever talked about it on this webinar. It's why we're so excited about it. Because this is a way to cast vision and appreciate and get people to come back. And this is a book. It's a new book the Rocker Company has just releasing right now, today. And it's a small book, an easy read. It's very simple, clean, quick to go through. They may even peruse it. They may just look at the highlighted phrases. But what they're going to get is a message that many of them have never gotten, which is a very clear, simple way for them to know, wow, this is why showing up is so important. What happens when you attend talks about how showing up is important in these 5 areas. And it really says, hey, awesome job. You've shown up. When you've shown up, you may not realize it, but this is happening. Community, authentic community, one of the highest things that God values, and one of the things that we shy away from so often as followers of Jesus. We go to isolation and God and I only. We go to island Christianity instead of community. Encouragement. Man, on average, people are hearing critical words more than they're hearing encouraging words. And this is a chance for them to just be encouraged, be offered hope, something that people just so desperately need. Exposure to truth. And we've talked about this a lot in this training. People are they're being bombarded with marketing, with billboards, advertisements, music, the stuff they see and the stuff they hear, things that other people tell them, opinions, all of this stuff. And it's hard to know after a while what's true, what's not true. How do I know? And to be able to say, hey, on Christ, the solid rock I stand, Scripture and the truth of God's word passed to us through Scripture, that's important. That's just important for people to say, hey, you get some truth. Everybody, you need a diet of truth in your life. Family, faith development. Man, for people who have kids, teenagers, when you show up, you are exposing your kids to faith, which is what they want. You want your kids to have faith when things are going great, when things fall apart. You want them to know there's something bigger, a bigger authority out there, bigger love, a stronger person out there than you as their parents. And that's what they're exposed to when you take them to church. And then church mission and vision. Hey, seeing this is more than just, oh man, I got to get up early and drag my kids in there. No, this is God's movement to the community through the local church. It's a big deal. So what you're going to get is 48 copies of what happens when you attend. And also we're going to have an accompanying thank you card and envelopes. And what you do is you just put it in there and it just says, hey, thank you so much for showing up at our church. We know it's not always easy to get here, but I appreciate the investment you've made in your family and their faith. I mean, just very simple notes that you could write them. You could have someone on your staff or your team write them, and it could be just from the church leadership. It could be from you as a church leader. It could be from the director of guest services, which I know none of us have as a church position. That's a volunteer position. Whatever it is, it's just a way of saying thank you in a personal way on top of this just incredible vision casting resource. And that's $199 for these 48 copies of what happens when you attend, which is going to cast vision to 48 people or 48 families. But we love to reward people who act quickly. So we always have a fast action bonus, and that's just our way of saying, hey, we're going to make this even better for you. And on top of that is the guest services system. And this is another product that we've released recently. People have loved the guest services system, and it's free if you sign up by the end of this webinar. And the guest services system has an overview, team training. This is volunteer team training, team roles and responsibilities. So how you can develop a great guest service volunteer team, a team meeting schedule, an agenda, a new visitor prep guide, how to get ready for new visitors, new visitor prep questions, an information table guide. We love that. I love that resource right there. Design for info table sign-up cards. We have a couple of colors that you can put in there. A visitor response email, someone who's there for the first time. We've already written their email back for them. Connection huddle guide, that's all explained. $139, the guest services system. We're going to get that absolutely free. So again, 48 copies of what happens when you attend, the thank you cards, all these pieces from the guest services system, $338 today just as a part of this webinar. And if all this did was appreciate people who are faithfully showing up at church, would it be worth it? If all it did was reinforce the value of your attendees getting encouragement, truth, community, a great guest services experience, would it be worth it? Fight the decline of attendance in the capital C church. If all this did was help you fight the decline of attendance overall in your community, would it be worth it? If all this did was just appreciate and cast vision, churches that think properly, think differently about attendance, act properly about attendance, churches that approach this in the right way, that churches attendance is about more than just the people who are here today, and attendance is about more than just the adults in this church. And attendance is about more than just guilting people to invite more people. And attendance is about more than who's not here. It's about who's here. It's about who's not here. It's about this generation. It's about the next generation. It's about the vision. It's about the Big C church. It's about God's movement throughout this community. It's so much bigger. In churches who think properly, act properly about that. And so you can see why, man, this is a great deal at $338. You can see why if you could engage new guests, you could develop current guests, you could impact the future next generation. Yeah, that's a great deal. Today, $159. That's 47% off if you go to whathappenswhenyouattend.com. So you can click it. You should be able to click it in the chat stream, or you can, file, open a new tab and type in whathappenswhenyouattend.com. And that'll give you access, 47% off access to this a case of 48 copies of What Happens When You Attend, and then the guest services system, which is free, completely free, when you go to whathappenswhenyouattend.com. And when you go there, it'll walk you through it. So don't feel like, well, what do I do when I get there? No, you'll be able to walk through what you're supposed to do to gain access to this. But you got to move very quickly because you have about 7-8 minutes to get this at 47% off. These are two resources that are all about people. And these are two resources that are all about engaging people who visit your church and who attend your church. And really, these are two resources that are about helping your church grow and reach more people in the community, but also impact people who are already there. And really what this is about vision. I say that over and over in this webinar. This is about casting vision. This is about casting vision to people who go to your church, that this is why it's such a big deal to be here and to have your kids here. And I say it's really a guest services staff position for $159. Nobody really can afford to have a guest services staff member. A lot of the churches I work with, most of the churches. So if you had someone who was just thinking about people who are there for the first time, really just the guest experience for everybody, and you could say, hey, I'm going to be your guest services staff member, and it's $159, not even $159 a year, not even $159 a month. You don't pay insurance. It's just a one-time payment of $159, and I'm going to handle all your guest services stuff. That's incredible. So again, you jump in, you can get started today. Whathappenswhenyouattend.com. We'll put it in the chat stream, or you can open a separate tab and click on that link. So Kelly, let's jump in with some Q&A.
Great, Ben. How would you say a church can help with attendance when holidays and events like sporting events happen on Sundays? How can they compete with that?
Yeah, in a lot of ways you cannot compete with that. There's some times where you can embrace those. For instance, Christmas Christmas is a time when you can leverage that holiday in a lot of ways to get some people in the doors of your church who may not normally be there, because people they're not going to come to church to hear a preacher, but if their niece is in a children's play or children's program, or someone else is involved within those services, then they may show up to that. But I realize there are some other holidays out there that are disconnected from the church, so to speak, like Christmas is or Easter is, and are very hard to compete with. 4th of July being a great example. I've preached when I was at North Point, I preached on 4th of July weekend, and I said, oh yeah, there must be a reason why they're having me preach this weekend, because there's no one here. And so I get that. I think those are opportunities for you to either do what North Point did with me, which was giving someone an opportunity to speak on a low-risk Sunday, or that's when you want to get some other people involved, get some kids involved in the service, some teenagers involved in the service, have some other things happening that can get some parents to show up. And I remember at my first church, I was in charge of kind of our drama theater kind of group, and we would do some sketches that had to do with the sermon. And when I got these teenage guys that were in the student ministry involved in these sketches, their parents showed up. That's the only time they came to church. But if you're looking to engage people like that, then the holidays, that's a good time to do that. You have a reason. It can be kind of this 4th of July, themed kind of thing. A celebration, an outreach kind of event. That's really the times when I think you just need to think about mixing things up, doing things a little differently than you typically do, because a normal Sunday on a holiday weekend, a lot of times those two things don't connect very well, which is, I assume, the reason why you're asking that question. So I would just look to mix it up, or I would look to give some people an opportunity to speak or lead worship that you're not sure if they're ready yet, but this is their shot. What next, Kelly?
For a church that is moving from being traditional to a little bit more cutting edge, how would you suggest they connect with both the old and new attendees?
Yeah, and I actually did a Launchpad training on that that talked about engaging everyone in the room from 18 to 84. And there's a lot of things to think about, but one of the things that I would be doing would be encouraging the older generation to invest in, I guess, the millennials, or, the 18 to 30 age group, especially like young singles and young married couples, because, man, the older generation, they've been through a lot. They've made some, good decisions and bad decisions, and they still learn from that. That's wisdom. They have a lot to share. When you're moving from traditional to contemporary, one of the main things you're fighting is just that arms crossed consumer mindset of church, which is, I'm showing up, you're not doing things the way I want, and so therefore I do not like what's happening. And instead of saying, hey, no, I want to mobilize those people. Instead of them sitting there pouting with their arms crossed, I want them involved in the next generation. Well, you have to do the same thing with 20s and 30s, is cast vision as to why them having older people speaking into their life is so valuable for them. Because their peers, the people who are around them, they're trying to figure out life just like they are. But people with some experience, some depth, some life underneath them, that's a different kind of wisdom. And I think, I would also, as a communicator, I would, deliver a message on something like praying. Let's say praying, which is one of those things that we feel like some people are like super great at it. Some people struggle with it. And I would interview an 18-year-old or a 21-year-old and an 80-year-old side by side, and just ask them, find a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old who prays, and ask them, hey, what's the number one tip that you would share? I mean, what have you learned about prayer? And make it simple and digestible, but just for people in your church to see those people side by side, that's a big deal. And then to keep, again, casting vision. I would even have intergenerational small groups or Sunday school classes where, the different age ranges are around each other. Multi-generational community, so valuable in my opinion. All right, Kelly, let's go one more. And then, you know what? Let me first jump in. I talked about these tips I was going to share at the end, and then we'll go a couple more questions from there. But a couple more tips. Church leaders, avoid the comparison trap. Your attendance is your attendance. It's your attendance from week to week, year to year, not your attendance versus the church down the road's attendance. That doesn't help. Avoid bashing the mega church in town. Yeah, this is easy for you to do if you're in the shadows of one. If your church is located close to one, it's easy to bash the mega church to make yourselves feel better. Don't worry about the church down the road. Don't worry about what the mega church is doing. You focus on the people God has called you to, and the people who are there. You focus on them, love them, put your hope in God. Fight discouragement and depression. This is a full-time job as a pastor anyway, but certainly when it comes to attendance, don't connect your mood to the number of people who are there. Turn your frustration into prayer. Just let it fuel your prayer. The best attendance habit I've ever established, okay, this is just me here, is I make a list of infrequent attenders. And I'm talking like the ones that are like there once every 2 months or something like that. And there's usually like a handful, probably 15 to 20 of infrequent attenders. And I write down something that I know is happening in their life. There's kind of a journal of infrequent attenders, or a Word document of infrequent attenders. And it takes a while for me to know this because they're not there very often, and I don't have all their contact information for a while. And then I text, call, or ask them about this the next time I see them. Hey, I know, I remember you were having back surgery, or you had something going on at your job. What's going on with that? I haven't seen you a little bit. I wanted to follow up. And what this does is just let them know that you're their pastor. Not saying you're staking your claim there, but I am a spiritual leader in your life, and I care about you, and I love you. And those people their heart remains engaged with the church, even when they show up infrequently. So again, what you're going to get today, when you jump in, immediately you're going to get 48 copies of What Happens When You Attend. It's going to be shipped to you. 48 opportunities to cast deep vision to people about the value of attendance. Thank you cards and envelopes. All of these parts of the guest services system. This is all the stuff you get today, $338, but you get it for $159. That's 47% off as a part of this webinar. And it says good until 3 p.m. Eastern, but we're going to leave it open for just a little bit longer because I talked a little bit longer, like I always do. I talked a little bit longer than I said I was going to. So we're going to leave that cart open for a little bit longer. And that's whathappenswhenyouattend.com. Or there's going to be a link in the chat stream. So you go over to the chat stream and you can just click on that link, and it'll take you where you need to go. And then that page will walk you through exactly what needs to happen. It'll be very clear for you how to check out and get access to all this guest services position for $159 total, not $159 a month or year total. You're done. Guest services is rocking and rolling. Now you are caring for people who are there for the first time, people who are there regularly, and people who aren't there. So while people are jumping in to whathappenswhenyouattend.com, Kelly, do we have any more questions out there that have gone unanswered?
Yeah, Ben, you've actually answered a lot during your talk, which is amazing. But we have one left.
Okay, cool.
How would you handle someone who is divisive in the church when it affects attendance?
It really depends on the government structure, I should say, of your church. And the number one thing that I would do before you make any types of decisions about stuff like this is get some wise counsel. And in the multitude of counselors, there's safety. I love that verse because it said, okay, I know what I'm feeling. I know what I'm thinking. I need to have some conversations with some people, and look for the wisest people you know, whether they go to your church or not. Explain the situation and talk with them about what they think. At the end of the day, if someone is harmfully and negatively affecting not only your attendance but the spirit of your church, then there's just some times when you do have to ask people to go somewhere else, and you have to ask people to leave. But I would definitely just have conversations, pray, and approach that person with compassion. Really try to get into the heart of what's happening in their life before you make any drastic decisions. So prayer and compassion, wise counsel if the divisiveness continues and it continues to be destructive to your church, then the last option, but the option is to ask someone to go somewhere else. And of course, at that point, people's pride is affected. It's like being broken up with. So they'll usually create a little more of a storm because their pride was affected. But then often they will leave, and that will allow you an opportunity to put the pieces back together and move forward. But here's what I've seen is there's been times where, someone has been so divisive in the church, and it felt like everybody, was turning against me, when in truth it was 3 or 4 people that were frustrated about some stuff. And there's always a ringleader. And I had a conversation and had all these people praying. I had a conversation with this guy who's kind of the ringleader of this. And I stayed very calm, very polite, and very, clear in what I was communicating, and just stayed very patient and very calm in the conversation. And I was just in it for the long haul. I mean, in this conversation, I had opened up 5-6 hours in my day thinking this conversation may last this long. The conversation lasted about an hour and 20 minutes. And somewhere around the 45-minute mark of this conversation, he just started opening up about all kinds of things that he was dealing with in his life. And the truth is, hurting people hurt people. And the truth is everybody looks for an authority figure to blame when they're hurt, whether it's a religious, political, family authority figure. Everybody goes to a football game and either yells at the coach or the referee, right? And the same is true in church. As the leader, hurting people, looking for things to be frustrated about, they're going to get angry at you. And sometimes it has nothing to do with you. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But often, if you can stay in a conversation where you prayed it up, you have other people praying, you may not tell other people the situation or who you're meeting with, just say, hey, I don't ask this often. I really need your prayers today for a conversation that I'm having. And just keep asking questions and keep extending compassion and trying to get yourself in the shoes of what's happening with this person. I have seen this so often that I've seen that people in those situations are dealing with or going through something, or they have a moral failure happening in some part of their life, and it comes to the surface. Not always, but sometimes. And it may be that the relationship is restored through that conversation, and they get it together. It may be that they realize the error of their ways and they really change. Or it may be that even after that, nothing changes, and eventually you just say, hey, if this continues, I can't have this. Here's the reason why. I'm going to need you to go somewhere else. But that's a tough situation. I know that was a long answer, but there's no easy way to answer that situation, especially when it's being divisive and pulling down at the attendance of your church. And I just ask those of you who are still on this webinar, pray. Who's the person who typed that in, Kelly?
Ben, I'm not entirely sure. I forgot.
There's stuff that's happened in the chat stream since then. You guys just pray for that church.
It's David.
And you guys pray for David and going through this, because it's never fun for anybody. And most of us have been there, David. All right, guys. Hey, listen, the card is still open. If you're still in there with us, you still have an opportunity to go to whathappenswhenyouattend.com and not just get the guest services system, but this case, 48 copies of What Happens When You Attend. And What Happens When You Attend tells people who are there regularly or who are there for the first time, hey, this is why this is such a big deal. Church attendance is one of those things that's declining everywhere, but you have gone against that mold, and this is why this is such a big deal, because of community, because of the truth you're exposed to, encouragement that you get, because of what happens in the next generation, and because you're stepping right into the place that God has chosen to be his vehicle to reach and impact this world. So what happens when you attend.com. Thank you for your time. Thank you guys for being in the chat stream. Thank you for being engaged with this. And even when we click off and end this, you can still go to whathappenswhenyouattend.com for a little while and just look for more Rocket Company webinars. We'll send you some emails and some invites We're talking about different topics. We're doing research and having conversations with churches out there. Just a lot of different stuff, a lot of great trainings coming down the pipeline, and we'd love for you to join us. The free webinars. We appreciate you doing that. And so again, thank you guys. We will hopefully see you at our next webinar, and just appreciate you guys, tracking with and, opening the emails from the Rocket Company and being a part of this community. So thank you guys. Thank you, Kelly. And we'll see you guys soon.